Hey, what is up guys? So in just 2 more days, Norden is coming out into the TCG. So let's go ahead and go over what decks we're going to get a lot more support from this new card that is already now banned in the OCG. So we definitely know that something is probably going to happen later down the line. I think everyone doesn't expect this or Instant Fusion to stay at 3. So anyways, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So, if you guys are unfamiliar with Norden, he has the effect that when he is special summoned, you can target 1 level 4 or lower monster in your graveyard and special summon it. Its effects are negated, also banish it when it leaves the field. You're going to XYZ and do other things anyway, so it's pretty much irrelevant. But a lot of different decks can make use of this. It's not just to get out the monster to synchro XYZ into, but you can actually also use it just so you control another certain type of monster. Because some monsters, they require you to have another copy, like, you know, a 6 Samurais, or they require you to have, you know, a Gear card on board to do other things. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So first off, I want to say there's a lot of rank 4 spam decks that can definitely make use of Norden, but let's go ahead and go over some of the older decks that will definitely get some great utility out of this new card. So anyways, I think Shaddolls get a very great addition with Norden, because if you guys haven't played against Shaddolls or played Shaddolls, you can OTK in Shaddolls a lot of time, especially when you go for a Shaddol fusion when your opponent has stuff on board. Usually you can destroy a back row, you're able to maybe draw a card or two. You're able to do a lot of different stuff, and then like you have a very powerful monster out on board. And if you're able to do that, then you can top it off with the Norden to maybe absorb one of the cards. You're looking at a pretty nasty field, especially since Shaddolls allow you to send, you know, whatever monster you want to the graveyard. You definitely have utility with that. Keep in mind, you don't always have to go for rank 4s. Remember, this card can bring back level 4 or lower monsters. You can bring back tuners, you can bring back Falco, you can go Goyo, you can take stuff. There's a lot of other utility that this guy adds, rather than just, you know, going to Poltepeus over here and just go into the Cyber Dragon Infinity. There's actually a card I want to talk about later on, because we don't have this card right now in the TCG, so there's a card that a lot of people are using instead of it. It's pretty close, but it's not necessarily as good, but it definitely has a great amount of utility. Next up, the Satellars. It does negate their effect, but the great side about that is that you're still able to go for a rank 4 spam. Sometimes you get your summon negated. It just lets you get out that card real quick. Maybe you need to defend yourself. Maybe you want to play extra aggressive. You're able to do that with Norden. It's just really great in Satellars. I think almost every deck will play Instant Fusion, just because this card is just so dang good in the game. But nonetheless, it is there. Now, as far as Necros goes, I want to mention an important ruling. As far as I know in the TCG, Shrit's effect that gets negated actually will still apply. So what I'm saying is, you can't go for Norden, bring back a Shrit, and then be like, oh, I use this card as material for Trishula. You can't actually do that. You'd have to have, you know, multiple monsters, because its effect is negated. Even though technically, I know the wording on Cycle, it looks like you, well, I'm going to go to Cycle. Well, I forgot what the exact wording is. But as far as I know in the TCG, you cannot go Necro Cycle and then, you know, target this card that you have. You actually can't do that because its effects are negated. It's you get to tribute 1 monster from your hand or field, and then ritual summon. So I was like, oh, maybe that you tribute it and then you get to go for it. But anyways, yeah, so you cannot shred into Trishula from what I know. So that's just important ruling. But, you know, sometimes different judges are like, you know what, I want to rule it this way. This is the way we're going with it. So always ask just to make specifically sure on that specific regional, or, you know, YCS or whatever, how they are ruling it, because there's different rulings all the time with Yu-Gi-Oh! But yeah, I just wanted to kind of mention it real quick right there. Yosenjus can actually make decent use of this. Sometimes it requires you to have a Yosenju card. I know that the other card that negates makes it so you have to have Yosenju only monsters. I'm hoping this deck will get its own Exceed. That'd be pretty cool. But nonetheless, this deck is one of these decks where you get a summon, it doesn't go through. Okay, you don't really have that many options. I know some people tried Tensu in it, but it's usually just like you just play Tenki. You don't have like a double summon Yosenju deck. But nonetheless, sometimes when your summon gets negated, you have like no play. So it's nice to have that Instant Fusion to bring back the card that maybe got negated, and then from there you're able to actually make a play. So like I said, some decks just, they don't have the option to go for another summon. Next up, Heroes. This is a deck that can definitely OTK as well. With the Mass Hero, you now have Anki, so it's even more you know, OTK win hard. With Norden, you're able to not only go into, you know, you go Hero Lives, bring out this, Mass Change, blow up all the back row, blow up monsters. You have options with, you know, Absolute Zero and the Acid to, you know, completely wreck someone's entire field. And then if you can throw an Instant Fusion on top of that, potentially making number 104, which we'll get into in a moment. Very strong stuff. Now, Fire Fist can actually make pretty good use of it. If you guys didn't know, there is a OCG deck that did really well with Fire Fist, and it's kind of crazy to see Fire Fist in these days. We haven't seen this deck in a while here in the TCG, but every once in a while there's someone that tops with it at some small regionals. But nonetheless, Fire Fists are still a decent deck simply because they have like one card out. It's like, you know, no special summons. When there's something out on board, like they're like Vanya's Emptiness, I don't know, Vanya's Emptiness Christia, go ahead, and you're like, oh, okay, go Tanky Bear Pop. Like, it's such a simple, great mechanic, and then you get to search out another Tanky. Great stuff. But there's an OCG deck list that I'll give to you guys later on, and you guys can mess around with it, that did really well at Topped, so you guys can mess around with that and see how you like, you know, trying out Instant Fusion and Fire Fist. Then there's also Mermills. Now keep in mind, it does negate the effect of, like, let's say a Pike, for example, but his effect is technically a cost, so you can still pay your cost, just like Sphere. Over here, Sphere makes it so you can just special one Mermill monster from your deck, its effects are negated. But you're able to still actually use Pike's effect to discard. Now you won't get that search for that level 3 water monster to your hand, but sometimes that's not really relevant. You just want to go for something to pop, or you just want to get something in the graveyard. That is still definitely viable, so keep that in mind as well. And hopefully we will get that new Mermail, the little guy, or is it it's Atlantean. The Atlantean Prince. This is the card that we really need in the TCG. So hopefully we can get this guy, and that'll definitely boost Mermills up so much more than they already are. You know, relevant, because they still are slightly relevant in the OCG. Every once in a while they are technically still there. So great card. But next up we have Raid Raptors. Now we haven't really seen this deck do too well in the TCG, but every once in a while, you know, sometimes people play it, and it gets a lot of advantage really quick. Like, you have to be very aggressive, and I think that majority of decks can be aggressive, just like the Performer Pals. But this will just allow you just to go ahead and get more of your Exceeds out, because that deck is basically Exceed as hard as possible, make some crazy stuff, and get a bunch of advantage, and also you have access to Icarus Attack, which I think is still a fantastic card even in this day and age of this game. Next up, Madolches. Now, I don't know if you guys have played Madolches, but the basic combo always puts you short of a few, you know, hundreds, maybe 1,000 plus life points, or maybe like 2,000 and under. With Norden, it makes it so much easier, especially because before your combo even starts, you can go, you know, Instant Fusion, Norden. Now, I keep in mind that there might not be cards in your graveyard, but, you know, there are other builds of Madolches. But for the most part, just being able to get this out and potentially just gaming your opponent is always good, because, you know, like I said, Madolches are usually short. There was at one point when people were doing TG Madolches, just because you were always short just a little bit of making it game, and you know, that obviously will help out a deck that basically is oriented around OTKing, and it was just, you know, sometimes short a little bit. Next up we have the Spiritual Beast. Again, just being able to control a specific monster sometimes is good, so you can just go into something anyways. Very great stuff, like maybe they negate the effect and, you know, like Instant Fusion, bring back another card anyways. Very awesome stuff indeed. Pretty simple mechanic. Next up with the Geargias. Now this deck basically is a budget deck, and I still think it's an okay deck. Again, it's not going to be able to compete with some of the more meta stuff in the game, but Geargias are still a pretty decent deck, and being able to just have another Geargia monster on board, there is this card called the Accelerator, as long as you control a Geargia monster. So even though its effects are negated, you're still able to control a Geargia, or, you know, maybe a 6 Samurai or something like that. You're able to just to continue to offer combos, especially if you get negated. Now, Geargias basically got phased out, but again, guys, it's still a decent deck. Try the deck out yourself and see that, like, it can compete with some other decks. You're just gonna have to, like, rely a little bit more on traps to compete with some of the faster stuff, like the Perform Mages and the Perform Pals just in general are just such a fast and strong deck. It's kind of hard for these decks to deal with, but if you're playing in the OCG, which is what you know, all of the Perform Mages are playing in, you have access to now triple Bottomless, which makes Geargias so much better, because you just sit there on your armor all day and just be like Bottomless, and this guy's just going to add you cards for days. I love this card so much, especially when you get to open up with it turn 1. Next up, 6 Samurais. They did get more support in the OCG, so I'm thinking, you know, maybe since they're not doing anything in TCG about, oh, we'll put Gateway back at 1. Even at 1, that card is just so good. But at 2, that's absolutely crazy. But again, like I said before, like even though it's negating the effects, controlling a 6 samurai is obviously important, especially if you get your first summon negated. You're still able to kind of do stuff. Maybe you got Grandmaster, you can go Shogun Shien, you know, you have options. Next up, Blackwing's kind of the same mechanic over here, where it's like, oh, you can kind of have another monster. Plus, Blackwings have a lot of options in the graveyard because you have tuners. Again, it does negate the effects, but being able to have like a Blackwing, you know, tuner. Some cards, if I remember, I believe it's Armor Master, is it? That Blackwing Armor Master. It does, yeah, this is the one that requires a Blackwing tuner. This card is still, in my opinion, a fantastic card, just because it's like, oh, it can't just be destroyed by battle, and you take no battle damage, you can place a wedge counter and then remove it. It's a really cool card. I like that card a lot. So it has access to, you know, stuff like that. And also, Lightsworn, they have access technically to this as well, because, I mean, you're going to get cards in the graveyard, no problem. But then, like, 1 instant fusion, Norden. And I'm not sure if this card is out yet in the TCG, but I know it's a prize card. I know it's going to be expensive, but, you know, there are players that, you know, can't afford these. You know, there's people that have, like, multiple giant hands. And so you're able to just make a Minera over here. If you're playing online, obviously you have easy access to it. But this card is just so dang strong in the game. Very good stuff. But more importantly, guys, I want to talk about this last card over here, this other Exceed, number 104, Masquerade. It's basically what a lot of people have been using. I know you can go into Pultomas over here, and you can go ahead and make, like, the other, was it Delteros? You have a lot of other options. But overall, this is the card that's the most similar to my knowledge. I mean, we're not talking about Shockmaster. Shockmaster is not some next level stuff, but that card is banned in the TCG. We're talking about, you know, since we can't use this, what's like the next best thing? Because I think this card is, in my opinion, the most similar, because it's during either player's battle phase. When an opponent's monster activates its effect, you can attach material, negate the activation. If you do, you get to inflict 800 damage to your opponent. Now, this is really relevant for the metagame. There are so many cards, whether it's like Honest or, you know, there's technically other monster effects. I think it's this one. How do they spell Valk? It's a VALK. Over here, where is it? During when an opponent monster declares an attack, this card is definitely viable, obviously, during that. You can be like, nope, Boojins aren't really too relevant in the game, but nonetheless, not only do you get to negate that effect, but you get to also deal 800 damage. It's small, but, you know, it's definitely a benefit. And he's got good attack, too, so I would say he's probably the closest thing, because sometimes, like, when you go for an Infinity, like, maybe you know that they have a Gores, because, you know, there are still decks like the Cosmos, which can, you know, activate stuff during the battle phase. So this card is still really relevant in the game. I highly recommend you guys to try this card out, because at first I was like, I don't really like this card. It's definitely worth it, especially if you're playing meta, because Cosmos are still meta in the game. Cosmos, I'm not sure how great they can really use the instant fusion as much as other decks, because technically you need that effect really to be able to, like, search and stuff to be really effective with the deck. I know you can get instant fusion into Cosmo Good, which in the deck is based around OTK, but I think other decks can use it a lot more, because you're able to explode. Where this deck over here, it's pretty much you have one monster, you attack, and then you attack again, and you use their effects. So I feel like that's kind of a downside with Cosmos and instant fusion, but I still definitely think it'll see play. Like, it's hands down. Instant Fusion will go in Instant Fusion Norden will go in literally 99% of decks in the game. I just wanted to mention some of the ones that were going to be more popular, as well as maybe you guys could try revisiting some other decks. Maybe you're going to revisit Girgias. I think Madolches are going to be pretty fun, just because it'll finally let you OTK much more consistently without running some, like, wonky little engine. But have some fun with it, guys. I would recommend you guys to, before, you know, we get that, well, we don't have that ban list yet in the TCG, but you're going to probably see this card at 1 or Instant Fusion at 1, or maybe they'll just ban either one, because I don't see them both staying at 3. That's absolutely crazy, but have fun while it lasts, or I guess have not so much fun while it lasts, because I think a lot of people are just going to go into this, and then you're going to have a lot of problems dealing with that. Potentially this, if this card comes out for the TCG, because this card is pretty much the problematic card, guys. But I'd like to know in the comment section below, guys, do you think there's any decks that I missed out on that could definitely make use of Norden? Maybe, like I said, Shaddoll is very, very good with this card because you're able to OTK. I know, like I said, 90% of decks will be able to utilize it, but I want to know what decks will really be able to utilize it, because, you know, I also have a video of, I'll link it down below in the description box, is a consistent Norden Quasar deck. So if you guys want to check that out, I'll also post that in the description box below, and you guys can see how consistent you can pull off a Quasar Dragon and you get a Draco Sack. So that's a really nasty thing for, I think, a lot of decks to deal with, especially when you go on turn 1. But nonetheless, yeah, it revolves around like refusions and stuff like that. But nonetheless, this card is at 3. I still can't believe it. And Instant Fusion's at 3, obviously, right now. But that'll probably change, like I said, guys. So have fun while it lasts, and let me know in the comment section below what decks you think you guys want to play, or what decks will be really good with Norden, and maybe if I didn't mention them already. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. It's been your boy, Will Smith, signing out.